as you know, we always like to start with music. And tonight we have a very special guest. You may remember her when she was the special guest of a previous Spark series. Jenny Finn is the founder of the Springhouse School in Virginia. But if you were here that night, you know that she's also a beautiful singer. And Jenny is gonna start us off tonight with something. And I know whatever it is, it's gonna be good. So Jenny, over to you.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you all. Thanks, Sam. Like Sam said, I'm from Springhouse here in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Floyd, Virginia. And we have 5 principles that we follow in our cultural design. And the first one is taking care of vulnerability. And I share that. So it's like at all costs, we take care of vulnerability in ourselves and each other in our place. And I'm sharing that because the song I'm about to sing for you is a song written by Sinead O'Connor, Irish musical artist, one of my favorites. I actually, Sam, just listened to her memoir that came out. I took a long road trip a couple weeks ago and I listened to her memoir, and it's really beautiful. And so this is a song from her. It's called In This Heart. And I sing it often as a way to take care of vulnerability. So I invite you to just, you can close your eyes, you can turn your video off, but just to listen to these words. It's such a beautiful song. It's one of my favorites. And I'm blessed to share it with you tonight. And I invite you to think about the places in your own life, in yourself, and in this world that are in pain and need to be sung a lullaby tonight, because that's what this is. So I will sing it for you. Take a couple breaths here, and I invite you to just let it wash over you. In this heart lies for you a lark born only for you, who sings only to you. My love, my love, my love. I am waiting for you, for only to adore you. My heart is for you, my love, my love, my love. This is my grief for you, for only the loss of you, the hurting of you, my love, my love, my love. There are rays on the weather. Soon these tears will have cried. All loneliness have died. My love, my love, my love. I will have you with me in my arms only, for you are only my love, my love, my love.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jenny.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Oh, Um, thank you again, Jenny.
Sam, can I ask her a question?
Of
Is that
course.
it? Jenny, do you sing this with and to the children? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
do?
yeah.
Oh,
This is one of those songs that they probably are like, oh, here we go again.
okay.
But they love it. They love
Oh,
it. I can speak for them. Yeah, it's something I sing often, especially when we just kind of want to settle in and take care of ourselves. Isn't it so beautiful, Stephanie? It's
lovely.
such a beautiful
Oh,
song.
such a gift for us, and I love
Yeah.
your love. So thank you. I'm sorry, Sam, for interrupting. I
No,
was
that's
just
okay. Oh, and
Thank you,
also,
Stephanie. It's good to see you again.
and even though, the idea that a lullaby is only for children is one of the
Yeah,
ways
well,
in
that's
which
true
we've
too.
lost our way. Like
That's true too.
we all
Yeah,
need lullabies.
that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm excited to introduce David in a moment, but I also want to remind everybody my hope that we will gradually be able to begin each meeting with a little acknowledgement from a different person in the community that helps us better understand your particular place. And so I'm wondering if anybody would like to do that. You don't have to. I have included some information about how to do a land acknowledgement in the spirit of tracing the story all the way back to wherever you are that land's original stewards, which I think is a really important part and muscle for all of us to become more familiar with. And if it turns out that somebody is not ready to do all of that, I think at a minimum, it would be great to just have one person ground us a little bit in your particular place and what you want us to know about it. Who would like to do that? Yeah, David.
Well, I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and acknowledging, first of all, that I'm just a couple of blocks from George Floyd Square, which you've all heard about. This is the home of the Dakota and the Ojibwe people. And the Ojibwe people were pushed here by colonization on the East Coast. Sorry for that interruption.
You're too popular, David.
Yeah. And the Dakota consider that there's a place here called the Bdote. It's the confluence of what is now called the Mississippi and the St. Croix and the Minnesota rivers. And they consider this to be literally the center of their universe, the birthplace. It would be like Christians going back to the Garden of Eden, and we have visited there. But in addition to that, Fort Snelling was an occupier's fort put up in about the 1840s, 1850s, and run for a long time as a historical reenactment site. It's literally been rethought now. And as they continued to excavate the grounds, they discovered evidence of human habitation more than 8,000 years old. That's older than the pyramids. So people have been in this territory. And the last group that I worked with here, I worked with the Minnesota Humanities Center on a piece of land that was also known to be a trading site. There were artifacts there from South America and Mexico up through Hudson Bay, from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's all passed through this land that is now called Minnesota. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, David. That's a perfect model. And again, part of what's fun about our little set of squares is that we're from all over the world. I would also just love to invite you to just tell us a little bit about the story that led David O'Fallon to Minneapolis. Like, why are you there?
The short version is I'm here because Irish ancestors were pushed out by the famine and landed on the East Coast and gradually worked their way across the nation here. And to give you an idea of how short the history is, when I visited the farm my father grew up on, and he was born in 1903 and lived 87 years. But when I would go to his boyhood home, which was no longer occupied, the remnants were still there of the original log cabin. They were still there. The first 4 or 5 courses of logs and the collapsed roof, and that had been used as an animal pen for a while. So even though I grew up in a small town of 5,000, all my relatives were farmers. I was the city kid. They were the farmers. But I baled hay, drove truck, built pole barns, did all that stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, David. So as we move forward throughout the calendar, I'd love to invite each of you at some future point of your own choosing to grace us in the way David did, with a better understanding of both the true roots of the land on which he is and the path that led him there. So tonight we are blessed with David Ehrlichman, and I get to finally turn the mic over to him. So many of you probably are already familiar with his work. He's one of the co-founders of Converge. It's a network of practitioners who build and support impact networks, and we're really going to spend some time tonight thinking about impact networks. He's the author of a book of that same title, and Dave has just shared a link in the chat so that you can find it more. And he's the producer of a documentary called Impact Networks: Creating Change in a Complex World. If you saw my email this week that was letting people know about this event, I included the trailer of that video. So, you know, David has helped form dozens of impact networks in a variety of fields. But actually, what's most important is that he is the proud father of a 9-month-old daughter. Maybe at some point we'll be lucky enough to see her wander her way into the screen. And if that happens, David, nobody here will be upset. And tonight he's going to help us think together about the structure and meaning and vibrancy of impact networks in general, and about this particular network that we've all started to create together. So, ladies and gentlemen, father of a beautiful 9-month-old girl, David Ehrlichman.
Thank you. Appreciate that introduction. Yeah, Ellie is crawling now, so it's possible that she might bang on the door. It's really great to be with you all. Thank you for having me and inviting me to this. I am also lucky here to be joined by one of my colleagues at Converge, Paula Manley, who is also a coordinator of Converge Network. I hope you do check out the website converge.net if you get a chance, because it has, I think, a lot of similar kind of vibes or inspirations as Seed and Spark, in terms of the living systems approach and, you know, respecting the wisdom of nature. And I want to share a little bit about our work and where this book came from, how it came to fruition, and then share some, ground us in shared content. And then I want to lead you through 2 different activities to build this network, because this is also, I would consider, an impact network, a group of people coming together to have conversations for shared learning and potentially for shared action. And this book, which I'll share my screen now so you can see what it looks like. This book, Impact Networks, it really builds on the good work of so many people. It's really a culmination of works from across the field. Where did this come from? Well, about 15 years ago, I was working at a nonprofit organization, and this group is doing amazing work. They're still around today. They support men and women without shelter to get trained and find jobs in the food industry. And at the same time, I was seeing that while they were really making a difference in the lives of individual people, which was amazing, they were, working in this huge, massive, broken system. And also they were only working by themselves for the most part. And so I started to get really curious, how could we work not just in individual organizations, but also work across organizations and across sectors to address these complex issues like lack of affordable housing in a systemic way, right? Taking the full systems approach. So that led me to a group called Monitor Institute, which is the social sector wing of a consulting firm. And it was there that I first discovered the potential of networks to create change. Networks, not just for social connection. We all know about social networks, but what many people don't realize is that networks can be deliberately organized to do so much more, not just for connection, but also for shared learning and sharing resources and collaborating with one another on larger issues. And I was inspired by early papers from people like June Hawley and Valdez Krebs, Madeline Taylor, Peter Plaschik, many others, and stories of networks from groups like REAMP and Lawrence Community Works. And from that, I was really inspired. I started dedicating my career to exploring networks in this type of open and decentralized way of working. We'll get into that. I was working as a network coordinator in Fresno, California for 2 years. Really saw the power of networks and relationships, a relational approach to this work firsthand. I catalyzed Converge with some colleagues in 2013 to help build the field and spread this work. And then through Converge over the last decade, I've had the good opportunity of working with over 50 different networks in a variety of capacities as a coordinator, as a facilitator, and evaluator. And through these experiences that we had, we started to see that while these networks were really different in their aims and their scopes and who was involved, there's actually so much that's similar in terms of how they begin and the leadership that's required and how they foster self-organization, what structures they use to create these decentralized vehicles for change. And that led me to write a book over the last 4 years to share what we'd learned, to share the stories of over 40 different network leaders that I interviewed, and to bring together what others have been doing in this space and also in related fields like community building and network science and systems thinking and more. And before we dig in further, I want to start by centering the voices of 6 network leaders from around the globe. And this is that trailer that Sam referenced, the documentary we produced just about a month ago, because really this work is not about me, it's not about Converge, it's about those who are on the ground doing this work, bringing different people and organizations together across all kinds of boundaries to do things together that we can't do alone. So also, if you have questions that come up during the course of this presentation, I encourage you to share them in the chat. And then Paula is going to do her best to respond to them in real time. And I can also hang on a bit at the end of this call to dig into those if anyone's interested in that. The documentary, you can find this at converge.net/film. There's the full version is about 18 minutes, and then there's a condensed 4-minute version, but this is just the trailer.
Nothing is in isolation, right?
It's a little quiet, isn't it? Can you hear that? It was a little quiet, Sam. Give me some feedback.
Everything is interconnected.
What I would say, David, I would pause it. And if you go back, stop sharing the screen, bear with us, everybody. It's a quick fix because I've been there. So
tell me.
Stop sharing the screen.
Okay.
And then when you share the screen again, now share it. In the lower left, once you take control, you'll see 2 things that you can check that optimize audio and video.
Got it.
And if you do that, we should see a smoother thing. Otherwise, it's this weird thing on Zoom. So now you should be good. Take 2.
Take 2. All right. Done this about 1 million times and still you encounter tech issues, of course. All right. Let's try it again.
Nothing is in isolation, right? Everything is interconnected.
I think networks are probably the perfect structure for today's world.
To bring different people from different sectors to come together for a common goal and for a common good that then achieves something that wouldn't have otherwise happened.
Too quiet?
If they hadn't come together.
Yeah.
With networks, we have the flexibility to.
All right. Well, sorry that the video is not working, but hopefully you can find that in the email that Sam sent. And you can also find the full thing at converge.net/film. Sound's not working. I'm sorry about that. but let's keep going. Let me try this again. All right. So why is this work important? Just the high level context here. We need to address these systemic issues that we face, and addressing issues like social inequities, climate change, providing economic opportunity for all. These are issues that can't be solved by working alone. We need to work across organizations, across sectors. There's not a single organization or institution who can do it by themselves, right? But of course, people and organizations embark on collaborative efforts all the time. We think we know how to do that, but we're often really frustrated by the results. What goes wrong? A few reasons. Number one, try to structure the collaboration like we would an organization, as a hierarchy and with some central authority guiding the work, when people fitting into specific roles to move it forward. Or we try to plan it all out in advance. We try to identify specific and measurable outcomes for the effort before people have even had a chance to talk together and start to work together and discover what they can and want to do together. This deliberate approach, this predict and control approach, only works if we already know what needs to be done and how to do it. But the thing is, complex issues are experienced really differently by different people. People are affected by these issues in different ways. They'll, like this art installation, they'll see things really differently depending on where they stand. And so in our work to address not simple, not complicated, but complex issues, we can't plan it all out in advance. We need to bring different actors together to make sense of the issue, to strengthen their ability to share information and resources, to coordinate their work, and to collaborate together to affect the whole system in ways that no group can on their own. And that's what it means to build a network for impact. And people have always formed networks, of course. We've always worked in community to solve challenges we can't solve on our own. And so in many ways, I'm talking about a return to the ways that humans have naturally connected with one another for as long as we've been around, in community, in relationship. And so in many ways, I'm also calling for an unlearning of the top-down and command and control model that has been imposed on so much of the world, often by white colonizers. Building on lessons from social movements and community building, as well as indigenous wisdom and generations of people who have worked in these ways for thousands of years. And then also by incorporating lessons from network science and new technologies and tools that help us coordinate with each other at larger scales. We really now have more tools and ways of fostering large-scale collaboration than ever before. There are proven practices for bringing communities and organizations together to address complex issues where there's no clear beginning or end, when there's no readily apparent solution. We can't accurately predict the path. And that means bringing together people around a shared purpose, around whatever lights a fire in us. Instead of telling people what to do, we find where the energy is. We foster connection, learning, and action around that shared purpose. And that really, in a nutshell, is what this book is about. How do we create connections? The subtitle, how we create connection, spark collaboration, and catalyze systemic change. Said another way, it's about how we can move beyond the paradigm of command and control and top-down decision-making to address complex issues by cultivating vibrant, self-organizing, decentralized networks that have the potential to create real impact. So how are impact networks formed? A short version, it's usually something like this. First, people work in, it's called scattered fragments. Some people and organizations know each other and work with one another, but overall the system is fragmented without information flowing between these different clusters of activity. If you think of each of these circles here representing an individual or an organization in the system, right? There are connections between some of them, but overall the system is fairly fragmented. And so one of the first steps is for someone or some group to see the opportunity to connect these different parts of the system together in a more deliberate way. This is how the Initiative for Multi-Purpose Prevention Technologies was formed. For example, this is one impact network. The website is theimpt.org. It's a global network that brings together researchers, product developers, funders, and policymakers and advocates to advance sexual and reproductive health for women and girls worldwide through the development of these multi-purpose prevention technologies, or MPTs. But the important thing is that the catalyst of this effort, Dr. Bethany Young Holt, she didn't stop there. She created opportunities for people not just to connect through her or through her organization, but to connect directly with one another so that she was no longer that hub or that bottleneck in the middle. And so over time, the network evolved here to stage 3, a multi-hub network where information and resources are flowing across this network from person to person and organization to organization without having to go through some centralized entity. And then over time,
David?
Just checking in, we're not seeing the slides.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the tech issues abound.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Good.
All right. So here's that scattered fragments. Well, that would have been very complicated to understand if you weren't seeing the slides. Here are the scattered fragments. Right? Some people and organizations are connected. Overall, the system is fragmented. If you imagine a person or organization as a circle here, there's some connections, but overall, the system is fairly disconnected. And so some person or organization sees the opportunity to connect groups together in a more deliberate way. Over time, those connections proliferate, forms multi-hub network. People are connected to one another without that central entity, without having to go through that central entity. And then over time, it grows into called a core periphery network, where there's a highly interconnected group of people who are connecting and learning and taking action together, and then a large and diverse periphery that is sourcing new ideas and new connections to other networks. And today, the IMPT, this network that I referenced, has more than 200 active participants in its core and more than 2,000 individuals on the periphery that are receiving its communications. Building a network like this is really different from building a machine or a structure, which we can plan out to exact specifications. Creating an impact network is more like cultivating a garden. No two gardens are exactly the same because every plant grows in relationship to its neighbors. It's also not possible to grow a garden overnight. It takes time for plants to develop no matter how much attention you give them. You can, however, provide nutrients and water and sunlight that plants need to grow and thrive. You can tend to the garden, provide pollinators, use fertilizer, pull weeds. You can attend to whatever the garden needs most in that moment. And you can also provide a bit of structure in the form of stakes or trellises to give plants support as they grow. You can even help lay a path through the garden that others can follow. But we also know that if we impose our influence too much on gardens or on nature, if we walk on the plants or we water too much, we might mess things up. So we cultivate the garden with care without trying to force it or control it. And that's really speaks to a critical role of network leaders. They're supporting things to emerge, they're creating spaces for people to connect and learn, have conversations, and take action together without directing or controlling its path. So networks are living systems. So they draw on lessons of how nature works. Like this murmuration of starlings, they're beautiful swirling collectives that change shape and adapt in real time. They're made up of individual entities, but the whole system stays connected through communication. And as a result, something emerges that's greater than the sum of the parts. Because working in hierarchies and networks is so different, working in networks calls for a different form of leadership, different forms of participation, totally different mindset. We call it a network mindset shift. When you embrace a network mindset, you stop working in isolation. Instead, you turn your focus toward cultivating connections. You start to notice more intently of how your efforts are related to others. And instead of trying to scale up an individual organization, you seek to scale out, increasing your impact through connections, relationships, and collaboration. And the first step to forming a network is to bring people together and find that purpose in the middle. What's the purpose or purposes that will connect people together? Purpose inspires people to join and contribute their time and energy. As I said, impact networks can't be controlled, but they can be oriented around a shared purpose. And then as the network clarifies its purpose, it's helpful to articulate shared principles as well. And principles are fundamental beliefs about how network members intend to connect themselves and work together in pursuit of that purpose. So whereas values are the things we care about, we hold dear, purposes are about how we're going to put those values into action. So principles operationalize values. And together, purpose and principles create a foundation for vibrant and creative, but also coherent self-organization. So people are doing different work, they have autonomy over the work that they're doing, but it also coheres into something together. And then meanwhile, we We then create opportunities for people to convene together, to become connected virtually or in person, sometimes one-on-one or sometimes all at once, in what we call convenings that bring the whole network together. Convenings are a really big deal in networks. They're one of the most impactful things that networks can do. But also they're so often overlooked or managed wrong. I think of so many conferences that are formed where amazing people are brought together at one time, only to have people broken out and watching a speaker that they could have watched remotely or on their own time, instead of really taking advantage of the people that are there to build relationships, to learn from one another, and to plan and make decisions for the future. And who do we want to bring together in networks? As Adrienne Murray Brown said, bring together those who, number one, are directly impacted by the issue, two, are doing compelling work on the issue, and three, can move the work forward. And another important point on this, convening people into a network doesn't mean inviting them into your thing. It means inviting them into co-creating what's possible now that they're part of the group. Every person who joins an impact network has the opportunity and to some extent the shared responsibility to contribute to its development. And then as we bring people together, we cultivate relationships of trust. And that means taking the time to understand what each other cares about and needs, to build deep human connection so that we can have the honest conversations that are necessary. Right? We build trust not so that we like each other. We don't need to like each other to work together, and not so that we agree with one another. A good disagreement and generative conflict is so important, but so that we build trust so that we can hold the tension through the inevitable disagreements and conflicts we'll face. So we can hang in there long enough until we can find a slice of common ground where we do agree and we can work together, or at least have a greater shared understanding and appreciation of each other's perspectives. And trust is built in a variety of ways. We can share stories. We can take off our professional hats, understand each other's motivations and worldviews more, and we can start to get into the messiness of the work and do good work together. And as we build trust, we also coordinate actions. We create by creating stronger flows of information and knowledge and resources across the network. These flows create stronger systems, just how the trees of a forest share resources thanks to the mycelial networks that connect them together. And so we find opportunities for people to coordinate their actions with one another by supporting each other's work and finding quick wins that make participating in a network a valuable use of their time. And just to give you a quick example of how these connections and flows can evolve as networks form, here's a series of network maps. This is from a network I work with in New York City, which is working to advance economic mobility across the 5 boroughs. About 48 different organizational leaders in this network. And this particular map was created based on a survey before the network had its first convening, its first moment of coming together. The individuals in the network are represented here by circles. The colors represent their sector, and a connecting line, in this case, represents regular communication between those two members. This is, again, self-reported survey data. And so again, before the network was formed, you can see there wasn't much information flowing between these leaders and as a result between their organizations. It's that scattered fragments phase. But then a year later, we took the time to convene together, to build relationships, to find ways to support each other's work. And you can see information is flowing and people are finding new and innovative ways to work together. And you can also see that the network recognized it had some gaps in terms of who was involved. So it invited members from a new sector represented by the purple circles. And then over the next year, the network brought in yellow circles. And at this point, you can see it has that dense interconnectivity that networks really need to thrive. They're not dependent on a single hub. People are connecting and sharing information and collaborating with one another in the context of the purpose that brought them together. And then finally, in addition to coordinating the things we're already doing, we can also collaborate in new ways to create change at the systems level. And that means making collective sense of what's happening from many different perspectives, bringing our pieces of the puzzle together to see the big picture, taking action on key leverage points, places where Donella Meadows has said, a focused effort on one thing can create big changes throughout the whole system. Just one quick example on this in the case of the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network that I helped catalyze, which brings 24 organizations together to steward 500,000 acres of land. Because if you're stewarding an entire landscape, there's no one group who can do it. You need to bring government agencies, local, federal, and state, land trusts, resource conservation districts, private landowners, timber companies, tribal groups, academic institutions. a lot of these groups disagreed about a lot of things, but they also, over time, recognized that they shared a lot of things too. They recognized the ecological and cultural importance of the land, and they found key opportunities to collaborate in ways that would support all their work. Specifically, one way they partnered together to pool their data sources and launch a massive region-wide vegetation map that was the first of its kind in the region, and they're using that data to reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire, an issue that affects them all. So to summarize here, these are the 5 core activities of impact networks, which we call the 5 C's: clarify purpose and principles, convene the people, cultivate trust, coordinate actions, and collaborate for systems change. And these 5 activities are dynamic and interdependent, never fully complete, and they loop back and forth on each other as the network evolves. As I begin to close this portion, I want to share 2 more things that all successful impact networks I've seen have. And the first is leadership. Because many people assume that networks like this just happen, that people will self-organize spontaneously. And that can happen, but usually only goes so far. The truth is that leadership always matters. It's just a different form of leadership than the one we see in hierarchical environments. Rather than defining rigid structures and rules, they nurture a culture of reciprocity. Instead of command and control, they seek to connect and collaborate. They're not there to tell people what to do, but to foster self-organization and to support people to discover what they can and want to do together. And you have great leaders in this community and on this call right now. Network leaders are really so often, I think, what make the difference, but because they're usually so humble and so quick to share the credit, we rarely ever know who they are, or we don't resource them in the way they should. That's one of my missions on this earth, is to raise the profile of these leaders. And then second, impact networks need some degree of structure, but the key here is not too much. They need only a minimum viable structure, just enough to provide support, like a trellis in a garden, not too much to stifle emergence and creativity. So that enabling infrastructure might be ways to where we communicate, online communication platforms, processes for making decisions, and so on. And before I close here, I just want to double down on a point I made earlier. It's all about relationships. It's what makes it all work. And networks are only as strong as a connection as that tie them together. Networks really fundamentally are just webs of relationships connecting people or things. So it's all about the connections. And that's how fragmented systems can become creative, adaptive, and able to produce outcomes beyond which any of us could achieve on our own. Apologies for the tech issues and the film. I do hope you check it out at converge.net. It's really beautiful to hear from those 6 network leaders who are in that video. Now, speaking of relationships, I want to take the remainder of our time here to do something that we will do consistently at convenings, which is provide opportunities for folks to connect directly with one another as people. I believe the degree to which you can build real human relationships with one another is going to be a deciding factor of how much you get out of this network and how much you're able to learn from one another or do together. So with that, we're going to get you in groups of 3, and you will be asked to share the story of a pivotal moment of your life and how that led you to where you are today. And the catch here is you're going to do that in 5 minutes each. So pivotal story, share the story of a pivotal moment of your life and how that led you to where you are today. Pivotal moment of your life. What was a transformational moment or period of your life? And the structure of this is each person will have 5 minutes to share their story. I'll write broadcasting messages to the breakout groups, so I'll track time for you. You don't have to track time. And during those 5 minutes, the job of everyone else in the group is just listen. You're not allowed to talk. If the storyteller stops sharing before the time ends, then you can ask questions. Tell me more about ... But otherwise, they should keep going until I broadcast out to the group that the 5 minutes are over. And that might seem like a long time to talk, but trust me, it's going to go fast. And also, don't be thinking about what you're going to say ahead of time. Really try to listen deeply, empathetically to the other folks. And just trust that your story is just going to come. It always does. And last thing, when you're sharing, I'll challenge you to go as deep as you can without feeling like you're oversharing. If there's a comfort zone, a challenge zone, and a crisis zone, I don't want you to be in the crisis zone, but I also don't want you to be in your comfort zone. I encourage you to try to go a little bit deeper than maybe you usually would. So getting into
David-
groups of 3. Mhm.
David, can I just check in for a second? Since
Sure.
it's almost 5:45, what do you think about pairs to manage the time? And however you want to go is fine. Just a thought.
I think we'll be able to do 3s in the time and finish it up. Maybe we'll get it to 4 minutes per story instead
Okay.
of 5. So let's do that. But I think 3s would be great. Add some diversity to the group. So I think we can start the breakout groups, and I'll be broadcasting messages with the instructions, and the prompt is in the chat. Right, welcome back, everybody. Hope that was meaningful for you. If you want to move into gallery view, at the top right, click view and then gallery. I just want you to take a look at the other people here. And I wonder, just rhetorical question, but after that exercise, does it feel a little bit different? Can you recognize how everybody in this room has their own unique and nuanced story to share? There's so much more than that's going on than meets the eye, right?
Yes, always.
Yeah. One final thing that I'd like to lead you through as we close here. And
real quick, David, as you
Go
do
ahead.
that, I know we're at the top of the hour, but we usually go till about 9:15 Eastern. So as long as everybody's okay with that, we've got about 15 more minutes together.
and no worries if you have to drop off. But now I want you to think about this network, people that are here, what you're interested in connecting around, maybe even doing together. And I'd invite you to go onto the internet and use that URL at the very top I have, or if you want to use your phone, you can text in. So the web address is polev.com/converge network. Or if you'd like to just text in, you can text the number 22333 and then type in the text converge network. But I think the website, if you are willing to do that, will be easier. So go to polev.com/converge network. It's also in the chat. And I have 4 questions for you, starting with this first one, which is, what are the most important ingredients for impactful collaboration? 1-word answers only. And if you can see my screen, you'll see the responses that come up. Trust, urgency, purpose. What are the most important ingredients for impactful collaboration?
I don't understand, but
If you go to a web browser, if you go to Safari or Chrome or Firefox, whatever you use, go to the website polev, polev.com/converge network.
And I just put it at the bottom of the chat. So if you just cut and paste that into a different browser, you'll see where you can respond to these questions in ways that add to this word cloud.
Here we go. We have energy, emergence. Nice. Now we're getting them. Purpose, relatedness, love, joy, intention, relationships. I like it. Beautiful. Now I'm gonna go on to the next question. Keeping this in mind, seeing what's here, what you all feel are the most important ingredients for impactful collaboration. I'm gonna stop my screen share. And the next question is, what do you find most valuable or important about the Seed and Spark network? So you're on that same website. You shouldn't have to change anything. The question should just pop up for you. And now you have a space to type in what you think the most important or valuable ingredients are, what you find most important or valuable about this network. And as you see, after you type yours in, you can click the up button next to one of the responses if you agree with that. So then you can see what rises to the top. You can upvote the ones that you agree with. We're going to do this same kind of method for this and 2 more questions related to this network. What do you find most valuable and important about the Seed and Spark network? We have open and receptive people and ideas, connection, inclusivity, great presentations, community, conversations, co-creating a powerful network of committed, related people, shared passion, shared purpose, care, passion, new learning with like-minded people. And I'll capture these and I'll share these with Sam, and he can pass along the resulting responses to you all. So just a few more seconds on this one, 10 more seconds. Co-creating a powerful network of committed, related people. Yes. Feels like what this is about. So now, next question, just 2 more. Next question, when you think about the shared values for this community, what comes to mind? What do you hope to see? I spoke with Sam before this call, helped craft some of these questions so that they can inform the continued growth and evolution of this network. So same process, when you think about the shared values for this community, what comes to mind? What do you hope to see in terms of shared values for this community? And then you could take those values, what you hold as important, and a next step might be, how do we operationalize those values into principles, right? How do we make sure we're holding ourselves and each other accountable for those? That's what principles are. But starting with values is a helpful place. And you can upvote the ones that you resonate with. We have curiosity and openness, co-creation, joy, emergence, openness, education, learning. Hope to see us coming up with a shared purpose we can post and repeat, remember and organize around. I like it, yeah. New relationships, new ways of being, new ideas for building a better world, inclusive collaboration. Now the last question is going to get more actionable. The last question here, and again, we'll capture these and share these back. The last question is, what would you love to see happen next in or for this network? And if you would be willing to catalyze or help lead the thing that you're suggesting, please add your name. So what would you love to see happen next in or for the Seed and Spark network? And add your name if you're willing to catalyze that or play a role in supporting that.
David, I have a question. I'm not seeing any of this or any way to make any comment on that. How do you do that?
Sure. If you want to just share it in the Zoom chat, if that's easy for you, that is totally fine. Otherwise, you go to a web browser and you type in pollev.com/converge network, which Sam just shared as a link in the chat.
Oh, okay. You have to be on that. All right.
So if you click that link that Sam shared in the chat, that will take you to this.
I might suggest that you do it in something other than Chrome, because Chrome will take you through steps to make it an extension.
Okay, thank you.
That's interesting because I use Chrome. I'll have to look into that.
I had to jump.
Yeah, interesting. So in the remaining time, I want you to share something that comes to mind, what you'd love to see happen. And then we're going to pause there and reflect on that in the full group. See if anything comes up, anything you want to share verbally, and then we'll wrap it up there. But take another minute here to share. And this can be something that the network leaders of this community can help create space for, or encourage the people who have reached out, brought up these ideas to move them forward. And as is the beauty of a self-organizing community, any of you could also take a lead in catalyzing what you're sharing here. What would you love to see happen next? Love to see more cutting edge learning theories. We're covering catalysts that like to become an active participant in a great project. Keep on sparking. Love to see this network develop a more defined focus that's actionable, more opportunities to connect with more participants more often. The deck. Love to see more individuals starting things and inviting people to conversations. So just want to hold a couple minutes here just to create some space. If you feel compelled to speak into the group about what's resonating with you here that you're seeing right now in terms of implications for this network, I invite you to do that now.
Well, I do have a question about our network, and it's around the notion of equity and inclusivity and how white we all are. I shouldn't say we all, but how predominantly white we are. And I'm just curious about whether that's a concern for network leaders and what we might do about it as a network.
It is definitely a concern. I'm not sure what to do about it. I would love your help, Daniel.
That's the work I'm doing in my local community. We're having a Seder, a Passover Seder, with our local congregation in the Second Baptist Church on April 9th. And
nice.
the theme of it is moving from slavery to freedom, the transformation.
And Daniel, let's you and me start a circle on the network so that we can seed the conversation together, and anybody that wants to join in can join in.
Love that.
I can share that something we've been doing at Converge over the past year or two is a lot of the earlier network members and participants each reached out to colleagues of color in particular who are doing network-like work. They may use different terminology, right? But we know them and we know the work they're doing. And so we've gotten to know them by forming a learning network and starting to engage. Coming up in 2 weeks, we're going to have our first joint retreat together, and we're creating more of a defined, process for expanding our network, which, because of this journey we've been on, will be much more racially diverse. So that's how we're doing it.
Last couple of minutes here. Anything else that's coming up for anyone here you'd like to speak into the group?
I was saying that I got my start in education with community gardening in the 80s, abandoned crack houses and things like that. And now we're starting to institutionalize it because we're getting a little bit too old to do some of that work and set up a trust and all that. And we've got this such wonderful set of millennials, multiracial, completely diverse from all over different places who've come in, and they're teaching us how to do that sort of thing and how to network and all that. And it's just absolutely wonderful seeing how that's working out.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think
I want to just go back to the small group sharing, and just one of the things I noticed in the three of us who were sharing is that none of our stories happened alone. None of our big moments were like, oh, I was entirely alone, completely unconnected with everybody, and then this happened. They all happened because of intense interactions with other people, and I can't speak for one, but it seemed like we had very little control over what was about to happen when that moment was approaching. So it wasn't like we staged a moment. And both of those things seemed really important.
I love it. Thank you for bringing it back to the stories. David, raising your hand.
I wonder, it would be really interesting. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm keeping the relationship maps that you showed us in the beginning, David, and how interesting it would be for this group to do that, because as I listen to the stories and just the 3 or 4 that have been told right now, and I think of a chunk of my own life, I think the incredible depth of connections would be surprising to us. And a lot of people on here, like we just heard, are leading our initiative. They are catalysts. I think we could be surprised at how much the web is already forming through what you've created in many ways. And Sam, what you and others have helped, generate. So I don't even know if that's possible, but damn it, it's exciting to me to even imagine it and think about it. I can sort of see it, the webs,
I was thinking the same thing, David, and I would be curious to see where those mycelial threads have been established and where they haven't been, and how together we can be more intentional weavers.
Amen. Yeah. I don't know how to do that, but I can. I'm excited if I could be a helpful resource, but I don't know.
Well, plug back to our website. One of my favorite things on there is we have a toolkit that's all Creative Commons, open source. I want you to use it, adapt it. And a couple of things we have on there is, number one, a guide for creating those network maps, along with survey templates that you can use. And the software to use that is free. And then second, also a facilitation guide with the directions of how to lead the story exercise in groups of any size, along with a bunch of other things. So I hope you find a way to use those and put them to use.
And I can find it under converge.net.
Yep, exactly.
David, would you be willing to be our network map shepherd?
God, spiritually, I'm willing. Technically skilled, I don't really know. I'm not trying to get out of it. I'm just saying, quite honestly, I'm not great at that. I'm willing to be a part of it for sure. And others may be more adept than I am, but I'm willing to plug into it. Absolutely.
Cool.
So thank you, everybody. I'm gonna turn it back to Sam. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, David and Paula. This has been really interesting and helpful. And I think the start of a conversation that may or may not continue next Wednesday, Gary Chapin. I know that next Wednesday, we're just kind of explorations in now what, and maybe this is a part of the now what. But clearly this is something that we all need to spend, that we get to spend more time thinking about.
I know have questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have questions and you have questions, so let's bring them all together.
Yes. We're 2 minutes past when we usually end, but maybe just a quick minute just to hear a few voices of what you're thinking about or what you're leaving with, or.
Hi. So thank you, Paula and David, and also for the YouTube video of the murmurations, the birds. I've seen that before in systems courses, but I've never seen multiple groups of murmurations flying together. And that reminds me of another image of what our community could be right now. We don't maybe have a sense of the other flock just yet, but I believe that it's close. And I wasn't too quick on the poll, but to your first question, remind me what it was, what's necessary?
Yeah, most important ingredients for collaboration.
I think it's embodiment. I think folks have to be in their bodies in order to be present enough to risk and to share and to collaborate.
I love it. Yeah, I hope you all check out that documentary. It has some really beautiful imagery there. That's at converge.net/film. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Great.
More murmurations.
One learning I've taken away from trying to create inclusive networks and diverse networks is that it has to be the most important thing. That diversity mirrors and reflects nature like no other concept I can think of. And that if it's not the most important thing, when we're concerned about the sustainability of the earth and the welfare of each human being, I don't think it will attract folks of color, Black Americans, to join us unless it's really a priority and they see value in what we're doing for their own lives.
Daniel, I agree. I shared the Converge equity lens in the chat also. That's just been part of our thinking and learning together about how to help make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking about that first question was the answer. My answer would have been vision, and the broader the network, the more diverse the network, the more transcendent the vision has to be.
You're muted, Sam.
Sorry, thanks, Ani. I was going to say that seems like a fitting place to end, and amen, Robert. So thank you to David and Paula. Thank you to everybody else for showing up for one another. Thank you for the people in this group always feeling like they have the space to say what needs to be said. And let's keep working and building together with even more intention and clarity than before. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.